thank you for joining me, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Allison Bartlett, and I'm the Senior Manager of Disability Programs, and today we're here to talk about laying for the groundwork for disability and beyond. There's a lot of information in this presentation, so bear with me, but it's live and it's being recorded, so it will be available after the fact. And because I'm full-time staff at HDSA, I'm a full-time resource to the HD community. So if you have questions or need resources, you can go to the website and you can talk to me directly. So today what I'm going to be talking to you about is a lot of different things. First, I'm going to talk to you about this disability umbrella, then the importance of planning, legal planning, insurance benefit planning, and long-term care planning. So all of these are issues that are incredibly common to the HD community and things we need to start talking about as soon, like a lot earlier on in the process, to give people access to the resources they need, because a lot of these things expire or become really difficult to obtain if you wait too long. First, I'm going to talk to you about this concept of the disability umbrella, because this is a new thing that I have started with HDSA. I came on because I'm a licensed attorney and my background is Social Security disability. I came on as a Social Security disability person to help families through the process. But as I've been at HDSA for the past 3 years, I've realized it's not just about Social Security disability. Like, disability is an entire process. It's a lifestyle. And so there's a lot of other things that fall into it that HD families need to be aware about, including legal documents and legal planning, financial planning, disability insurance and benefits, health insurance, other insurance like life and long-term care insurance, and then long-term care itself. So why do I need to care about disability now, or why do I need to care about it as soon as possible? It's because disability is a long and complicated process. The sooner you start preparing, the better. I also know that I'm an attorney and preparation is life, but I promise it's really important. And the more you prepare in advance, like, the easier things can be. Also, if you don't prepare, you will lose out on possible benefits. And once the benefit is gone in most circumstances, it's gone. That's just it. No one else is going to make sure you sign up for the benefits you need. It's your job to take care of yourself and to advocate for yourself. And advocating for yourself is not something we are taught. It is learned, and we have to practice it every day. So today is a good day to start doing that. And then the importance of preparation can help expedite the benefit application process, can help you get approved for benefits. It can help you understand and describe your own symptoms and limitations for benefit purposes or work accommodations or just anything else you may need. And it can help you advocate for yourself. And you may want to ignore disability, but it's not going anywhere. And kind of how I joke about myself like this, but sometimes I feel like I'm a Disney villain because nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody comes to me like skipping and jolly. It's like when Ariel goes to Ursula in the darkness of her cavern because she needs something and there's no way else for her to get it. I'm Ursula. Hi, it's nice to meet everybody. She's not so bad. I'm friendly, I promise. I'm not going to trick you into signing a contract and giving your voice away. But nobody comes, it's not like, oh, we're walking into the light. It's more like, okay, I have to do this now. Let's go do this. But I promise if we don't treat it like it's this dark, scary thing, it's not as dark and scary as we make it out to be. And this is just a handy little chart. This is like a really high-level overview, but of when to think about when you need to do things in this process. So pre-symptomatic HD, this is really the planning stage. So this is doing research for financial and legal stuff and your disability options, like looking into what your options are for the future and what you may need for yourself. Early to mid-stage HD, that's when you start to see some of these symptoms, that when you start having to stop working and things like that. I call this the action stage because that's really when you need to obtain disability. This is when you need to put legal and financial documents in place. And then late stage HD is the benefit stage. This is really where you need to be using the benefits that are already in place and possible transfer to long-term care, depending on what you and your family members have decided is the best decision on what you want to do moving forward. And again, talking about this stuff means your wishes are heard, they're on the table, and it makes it easier for people to do what you want because it's been a decision and it's a cohesive process. Sorry, I talk a lot and I talk fast and sometimes I forget to breathe and there's just a lot going on right now. And I'm trying to make this fun because it's 1:51 in the afternoon and we're all tired and it's been a long convention, but I'm so glad we're here in person. Anyway. So for legal and disability considerations, this includes things like legal preparation, so asset protection, estate planning, power of attorney, and guardianship, or legal decision making. And then this also includes disability, health, and other insurance, which is public, private, and employer insurance benefits, and then long-term care. So legal planning. Why does this matter? Without proper legal documents, the HD affected individual could fall through the gaps in the legal and healthcare systems. And I've been working with the HD community for about 8 years at this point. Any hole that exists in our system, any gap that exists, someone with HD is going to find it and fall into it with dramatic consequences. It's awful. And by preparing in advance, we are trying to avoid letting that happen. And legal trouble includes things like civil trouble, criminal trouble, bankruptcy. These are incredibly common things in the HD community. Not being able to afford or access proper care, and being denied access to government benefits. And something that's really relevant with legal trouble, if you are symptomatic with your HD at the time you get in legal trouble, it is 100% relevant to tell your attorney, the arresting officer, everybody involved in the process that you have HD, because it's important in how you're charged, if you're convicted, and what your sentence may be. So it's relevant at all stages of the process. If you come to me after the fact and you're like, this person's in jail, did you tell them about the HD at any step in the process? No, I can't fix that. The legal system maybe could fix it upon appeal, but I'm not a specialist in those things, but like it makes it that much harder because it wasn't disclosed to begin with. So legal planning, why does it matter? Proper legal documents take time, planning, and cognitive awareness. HD is a progressive condition. You will continue to decline, or your loved one will continue to decline, so the time frame in which you can do things diminishes. And if you take too long, you can't get it done, because in the United States, you have to have a certain cognitive standard to be able to sign legal documents. And as some people progress, they get paranoid, they have lack of denial, lack of insight, they have denial. They don't lack it, they very much have it, but they have lack of insight and lack of awareness. So it makes it a lot harder to get these things signed because they won't agree to it. And the more options you have in this process, the better able you will be to make the decisions when the time comes. And you do not want to have to worry about spending down assets in order to get the benefits that you or a loved one needs, because that's incredibly difficult. Medicaid wants to get paid back and could take the family home as repayment. When you get government benefits, the government is going to get repaid in some way, form, or fashion. And people don't think about that. Like, yes, Medicaid is for low-income individuals, but in a lot of circumstances, like after you've gotten care, especially like nursing home care, Medicaid is trying to get paid back from other assets you or your family have when you pass away. So why is asset protection so important? It's because there are a lot of different government programs that look at resources and assets, including supplemental security income, which is one type of Social Security disability, Medicaid, which is health insurance for the low income, food stamps, housing assistance. Then there's also state programs that look at it, like the temporary assistance for needy families, and programs like low-income home energy assistance programs, which it's important for families to know about these things, because if you need additional assistance, there are a lot of programs out there to help you stay in your home, afford your home, and other things. But you do have to meet these asset limits. So what is an asset? It is cash, bank accounts, stocks, savings bonds, land and property. This does not include the home you live in, but if you own any extra property or a rental property or anything else. I once had a client who literally had like a 5-acre plot of land in the middle of nowhere that she couldn't sell, but was keeping her from getting benefits because it was worth enough that it was an issue. Vehicles. The law is very antiquated. It's 1950. Only the man of the house is allowed to have a car. So Social Security counts if you have more than one car against you. That counts as a financial asset. Retirement accounts, both IRA and 401ks, life insurance policies over $1,500, burial funds over $1,500, personal property, and deemed resources. And deemed resources, let's say you're living with your sibling and your sibling covers the cost of everything because you're not working. Everything that your sibling is providing, like the rent, the food, that all counts as a deemed resource. And that is really relevant for SSI because it'll limit the benefit that you can have. So what are some asset protection options? We have trusts, caregiver agreements, ABLE accounts, and estate planning. And again, what I'm providing is a very high-level overview. I am not an expert in any of these things. I'm here to make you aware that they exist, but a lot of these things need a specialized attorney to create them so they are done properly, and to guarantee they don't interfere with things like your SSI or Medicaid benefit. So a trust. A trust is a financial agreement that allows, sorry, I was looking at this and I'm like, this feels very legalese. It's too middle of the day for this. But essentially, what a trust is it's a financial agreement that allows a third party to hold assets on behalf of a beneficiary or beneficiaries. And so what this is saying is, like, if I have a trust, this pretend person right here, they're the ones who control it, and I have to ask them for permission to use money. And that's not true in all trusts. That's only in a revocable trust. Revocable trusts are one that, it's known as a living trust, one that you can just get rid of or change at any moment. If you maintain control of the asset, that is not something you want for Medicaid or SSI purposes, because that's going to count as a resource. An irrevocable trust, one where you don't actually keep control of your money, it still belongs to you, but you have to ask someone permission to take the money out and to use it. That is what is going to protect your resources and not have them count for Social Security or Medicaid purposes. And trusts are incredibly complicated. There are special trust attorneys. Those are the ones you need to work with, especially if you're dealing with special needs trust or Medicaid protection trust, because there's a lot of complicated rules and they vary from state to state. You need to make sure those things are done correctly so nothing in that trust counts as an asset if you need the government benefits for Medicaid or SSI. And specifically special needs trusts, these were designed for dependents who receive government benefits like SSI. They were designed for disabled individuals to allow them to have money to care for themselves while also being able to get the benefits that they need. And Medicaid Action Protection Trusts do the same thing. And then income trusts are another kind of special purpose trust that can also help with Medicaid applicants. And I'm talking about all of this stuff because with Medicaid, there's a 5-year look-back period. If you have moved money or given it to somebody else or disposed of it or done anything with it in the 5 years before you apply for Medicaid, that still counts as an asset in your possession. So if you ever want to have Medicaid, or if you want someone else in your family to get on Medicaid and you're thinking about this for long-term care purposes, you have to do this more than 5 years in advance. Another thing to consider, which I had this conversation recently, is Medicaid has a lot of really awesome benefits. Like they have waiver programs for home health aides and like nursing care and things like that. A lot of states, the wait list is so long, you may have to wait 5 years for those benefits. So that's also something to think about. If you want to apply for them, you may need to apply for them in advance, so when availability actually comes up, you can get the benefit. Another agreement is a caregiver agreement, and these are really beneficial because a lot of times in the HD community, people with HD are cared for by their families. And a caregiver agreement is a way of compensating family members for the care they provide. It helps avoid Medicaid penalty period that can result from transferring assets to a family member, so that 5-year look-back period. It's one thing to just give family money, it's another thing to pay them because they're caring for you. And the agreement is a contract typically between a family member who agrees to provide care and the person who's disabled. It's an effective way of giving back to those who provide care while also reducing the applicant's assets. So it has a dual purpose. Okay. And then without the agreement, payments to a caregiver will be considered a voluntary transfer of assets or otherwise a gift. It's a fancy way to say a gift. Yay, lawyers. Thank you. Okay, so if you wanted to have a caregiver agreement between yourself and your loved one, it needs 3 basic things. It has to be in writing. Everything has to be in writing. Like, there's a few things as a lawyer I always say, it depends. It has to be in writing. I don't practice that kind of law, ask somebody else. And then the payment must be for care provided in the future. It doesn't have to, it's not like a back payment. It has to be moving forward, and the compensation must be reasonable. So it can't be too much and it can't be too little. A properly drafted personal care agreement must contain all of these things. I'm not going to read through the whole list, but it has to be detailed. The more detailed you can be, the better. Especially if like anybody asks about it or comes looking for it, you want to make sure that everything is included. All right. Another thing that's really helpful is something called an ABLE account. This is not going to be relevant to most people in the HD community because you have to be under the age of 26 to be able to use it. Like your disability has to start before you turn 26. But if you are a younger individual or you're somebody who is working with someone with HD, these are really great because this essentially works like a special needs trust without having to incur all the costs of setting up the trust. These are a lot more affordable for families, but if you're allowed to have, nope, that's my next slide. Okay. But yeah, they're tax advantage savings accounts, so this money is also protected from SSI and Medicaid purposes. You can have, yeah. Again, these are like, it's a federal program, but they're state run, just like Medicaid, so every state has a little bit different criteria, so I can't say what all the criteria are for all the different states. You can put up to $15,000 a year in them, and they can be used for a lot of different reasons. A qualified disability expense means a lot of things. It includes education, food, housing. It includes things like vacation sometimes, because going on vacation and having fun is part of a standard of living and good quality of life. And so this can be a good way to make sure a person is provided for without impacting their benefits, and it's a more affordable way to do it than a special needs trust. Another really good thing that everybody should do, whether you have HD or not, is estate planning. And estate planning is making a plan in advance to indicate who will receive your possessions, what you want them to receive, and when you want them to receive them. It should include instructions for who's going to get what and how it's going to be passed to them, naming a guardian for minor children, providing for family members, life insurance, disability income, all of those things. And why is it important? If you do not have an estate plan, your state already has one for you. And this is dependent on whether you are deemed disabled and somebody gets guardianship or if you pass away. So if you want to make sure your things go to who you want them to go to when you pass away or you no longer have capacity, you have to put it in writing or you lose that decision to decide those, like you lose the ability to dictate where those things go. If you're disabled and you can no longer conduct your own business due to mental or physical incapacity, the state will appoint somebody as your conservator or guardian to take care of you. And if you hadn't had that conversation with family or you no longer have family around, you have no control of who gets appointed to speak on your behalf. And if they don't know you, they're going to act based on what information they have, but they're not going to have any idea of what your wishes were before you became incapacitated. And upon death, in many states, like if you're married with children, your spouse and your children will share a share of your assets. And if you have minor children, the court will control where those things go. But we all know, family's complicated. Honestly, estate planning in law school is like the family drama class. It was great. But you don't actually want to live that. You don't want to have to go through that, and this helps with that process. And it just makes you feel more confident moving forward because, again, there's a lot of things when you have HD that you lose control over, but having an estate plan gives you some of that control back. And like I said before, it's for everybody, regardless of age, income, or wealth. And this is really important because HD can be a really expensive disease. So having these conversations and planning in advance can help deal with those costs. And because a lot of times things get pushed down the family, but this can help with those things. And actually, estate planning is most beneficial to people of median and lower incomes. Everybody thinks like, oh, estate planning's for the wealthy. It's actually not. It's actually most beneficial for people in like the medium income levels. And what do you need in an estate plan? A will, a living will, or an advance directive, power of attorney, and medical power of attorney. So power of attorney specifically is for like legal financial matters. Medical power of attorney is just for medical decision making, and you will need both of them. Okay, so legal decision making. This is really, 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 really important. And the reason I say that is because, again, the progressive nature of HD, like cognitively speaking or behaviorally speaking, at some point a person with HD is likely going to lose the ability to make their own decisions. If you don't have things in place, someone else will get to decide the decisions for you. And I don't want that. And a lot of times what ends up happening is like you find somebody who is now in homelessness or in squalid conditions, or they're not taking care of themselves and like it can even cause faster disease progression, because like once they go down that road and no one's there to help them out of it, it's just going to keep going and going. So what are your options? I just talked about what happens. Okay, so the big difference is, the power of attorney, everyone really should put a power of attorney in place. These documents sound scary and people think they're signing away their rights, and that's not actually how it works. What it does is it allows the HD individual to appoint a person to manage their affairs and speak on their behalf, and the power of attorney can be revoked at any time, as long as the person with HD still has capacity to make that decision. And it can be written so it only takes effect when the HD individual is no longer mentally competent, and you can literally put in the power of attorney document that it's the neurologist at the Center of Excellence that you've been getting care at for 15 years who makes that decision, and then that doctor would sign an affidavit and submit it to the state. With guardianship, an adult with HD is deemed incapacitated by the state in a legal proceeding. You have to go to court. There is no consent from the HD individual. It takes effect upon court ruling, and it is very difficult to revoke. If anybody follows the news, we can just look at the Britney Spears saga. And that was that's a different kind of issue, but that just highlights how difficult it is to deal with and manage our guardianship and how little control you have. And especially if it's somebody who's state appointed, they never met you before, they don't know. They're just trying to, most of the time in that case, they're probably just trying to make sure you get the medical care that you need and that you're in a proper facility to care for you for the time that you have left. So power of attorney, there's a few different kinds. There's a general POA, a special POA, a healthcare POA, which again is just for medical decisions, and that's if you need to have both of them. Somebody in your life should have a healthcare POA and somebody else should have a different one. And the reason these are on a separate screen is because, yes, healthcare POA is really important for HD families, but the other kind of POA that is essential is a durable power of attorney. And the reason you need a durable power of attorney is because these do not expire once you are deemed incapacitated. All other forms, not the medical one, but the other power of attorneys, those expire once you're found incapacitated, which means that you would still need guardianship. Having a durable power of attorney in place means you likely don't have to go down the guardianship road. Guardianship can be very expensive, it can be very time consuming, and again, you have to go to state court. It is a legal proceeding, you physically have to appear in court. That is a really time consuming and stressful process. And one thing that does get confusing, guardianship and conservatorship are two terms that are used interchangeably. States define them differently. Some define guardianship to mean guardianship of a child and conservatorship of an adult. Some means guardianship of the person and conservatorship of money. And so it definitely, if you're not sure what term your state uses, look them both up. But I just wanted to let everyone here know that unfortunately these terms are used interchangeably and some states use them differently. They essentially mean the same thing. States have interpreted them differently, so that can be confusing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about insurance benefit planning. What types of insurance do I need to consider in this process? Disability insurance is really important, and that includes short-term and long-term disability, health insurance, and life insurance. So why does this matter? If you do not prepare in advance, again, you may miss out on benefits. Can create financial difficulty, and you need to be able to access the insurance to get proper care. So there are really, these benefits fall into three different categories: public benefits, private benefits, and employer benefits. And what does that mean? Public benefits are government benefits. These are things you pay into through state or federal taxes, and these include disability and health insurance benefits. So Social Security disability, supplemental security income, Medicaid, and Medicare. Private insurance benefits are through private companies. You pay them directly to the company, like Mass Mutual. And these include disability, health, life, long-term care and benefits, and other benefits like hospital insurance, accident insurance, all the stuff Aflac provides and things like that, like fringe benefits. And then employer benefits, They're also through private companies, but they're offered through your employer, so they're often offered at a discounted rate. They come automatically withdrawn from your paycheck. The criteria for getting them are always not as strict because it's offered through your employer. And this includes things like disability, health, and life insurance benefits. So the most well-known benefits, public benefits, are Social Security and Medicare. And then state programs, it gets confusing because while these are all public benefits and everybody sees Medicaid as a federal benefit, it's run at the state level. So it's a really weird federal state benefit. And it's fun. That's why all states have different criteria and you can't just transfer Medicaid across states. Okay, so one benefit that a lot of people are aware of, and everyone should be aware of, especially if you pay Social Security taxes, is the Social Security Disability Insurance Program. And this is the program you want to be eligible for. You are eligible for this program by paying Social Security taxes and getting your work credits, and the amount that you will eventually get if you ever need disability is based on your personal work history and the amount you made at your jobs. You can earn up to 4 credits a year. Currently, you only need to earn $1,510 for 1 work credit. So that means if you earn $6,040 in the year, you've earned all of your work credits for this year. To be eligible for disability, you have to have 20 credits, which means you have to work 5 out of the last 10 years. There are slightly different rules for if you're under the age of 31, but I'm not going to get into that right now. You don't have to have as many credits, so there is a little bit different. But really, you have to have worked 5 out of the last 10 years. That's the easy way to talk about it. And what impacts work credits? Attending school, getting your master's degree, getting your doctorate. Like if you are not working and paying into Social Security and paying taxes, you're not getting credits towards Social Security disability. If you have a family and are a stay-at-home parent, you are not paying into Social Security disability, and there are no protections for stay-at-home parents. It's a huge hole in the system, but just to be aware, there are no special exceptions for stay-at-home parents. And then to be eligible for SSDI, you have to be making less, or you can't be doing substantive work, meaning you have to be making less than $1,350 per month gross, which is before taxes. That amount goes up slightly every year. So Social Security is dependent on inflation, and so they adjust everything every year. So the amount you can earn goes up a little bit, like your actual retirement and disability benefit goes up a little bit. So the numbers always change. So just be aware that these numbers go up a little bit every year, but this is always going to be the baseline from 2022 out. And then there's supplemental security income. This is the other Social Security disability program. There are 2 of them. People get confused about this, but there are 2 Social Security disability programs. This is the financial need program. You don't have to have any work history, but you have to meet the really strict financial criteria. So as an individual, you have to have less than $2,000 in resources, which we talked about earlier, or $3,000 as a married couple, because you don't count as a full person, you only count as 1.5 people if you're married. And monthly income, this depends on family size. The bigger your family, it's close to federal poverty level, but it depends on how many adults versus how many children are in your family. So if there's 5 people in your household, but 4 of them are children, you're gonna have a higher monthly income level than if there's 3 adults in your household and only 2 children. But I can't tell you what that's gonna be, because Social Security has these really crazy equations and you're gonna have to ask them directly. I've been trying to figure it out for years and it's beyond me. For health insurance, so Medicare is for individuals over 65 or if you're receiving Social Security disability insurance. So this is only for SSDI. What is included? You get Part A, which is hospital insurance, there's no premium, and Part B, which is medical insurance, which is covering like doctor's visits. And that currently is $144.60 a month. What is not included? Drug coverage or dental coverage. So you're gonna actually have to purchase Medicare Part D plans if you want that additional insurance coverage. And if you have HD, you're going to need that additional coverage because HD medications are expensive and you're gonna need it. And then there are financial assistance programs through Medicare. They're called Medicare savings programs, and you can access them through your state health insurance assistance programs, but a lot of times what that means is there are a lot of people, as long as they're making less than, I think, about $1,300 a month in their disability benefit, they can essentially get Medicare and Medicaid, which is great because when you have both of them, it doesn't cover everything because it's not perfect, but it covers a lot. What's really important to note, Medicare does not cover long-term care. I'm going to say that again. Medicare does not cover long-term care. So if you get Ssdi, Social Security Disability Insurance, and you get Medicare after your 2-year waiting period, which that's a different issue, you will not be able to pay for long-term care with your Medicare, and you're going to have to pay for it out of pocket. The only way to get you would need to get Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid covers long-term care. Medicare does not care about you. That's not true. I didn't know what else to say in the moment. Okay. This is a handy map because this is talking about who has expanded Medicaid. So Medicaid was, states were able to expand Medicaid starting back in 2008. Not every state has done it. So, yeah. Is that there? What in the, nope, that's the wrong map. Oh, sorry. There's too many maps in my presentation. No, there are certain states that actually offer additional state benefits on top of Social Security disability insurance. And because, again, that's crazy state specific, I don't know all the states that do it. But there are certain states, if you're getting a certain amount of disability, you can get a benefit bump based on where you live. But that's something you're going to have to do research into because I don't know all the states that do that. Another thing that you can get is temporary state disability. Only a few states offer a short-term disability. You must live and work in the state for at least 14 weeks. The benefits last anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and they range for 50 to 70% of your salary. And then some states have actual paid leave programs, but it's not very many of them. Georgia is not one of them. This is really applicable to states like California, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island. You can always double check, but it's a good benefit to have, but so few states have them. So it's probably better to operate on the assumption that your state doesn't have it. Always double check to be sure, but don't count on the benefit. This is the expanded Medicaid map. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. As you can see, Georgia has not expanded Medicaid at this time. And so because Georgia has not expanded Medicaid, the only way you can get Medicaid as an adult is if you've been approved for supplemental security income. So Medicaid was mainly, it's still for people, it's health insurance for financially needy families. There is no age limit for it. It's provided with SSI in most states. So if you're approved for supplemental security income, you're going to be automatically approved for Medicaid. Some require you to fill out the application just so they have that on record, but your Medicaid will go through. There's only a few states where you have a completely separate application. Georgia's not one of them. And what is included? Inpatient and outpatient hospital services, physician services, laboratory and x-rays, home health services, other optional benefits, and this covers long-term care. And this is incredibly relevant for HD families because so many people with HD end up needing in-home care or nursing home care, and this is the best way to pay for it. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay out of pocket, and that's incredibly expensive. The average is like $6,000 a month for out of care. Okay, so those were the public benefits. There's so much about benefits. I was like, I don't remember where I am. But so though, and as I said, the public benefits, so the government provided benefits only cover disability and health insurance. If you want other things, you're going to have to get private or employer benefits to get those things, and that's namely life insurance or other kinds of insurance. You can get short-term disability on your own through a private company. It's not really cost-effective, and it's only really beneficial to get short-term disability if you also get a companion long-term disability policy from the same company, because then the short-term disability policy will cover the waiting period for the long-term disability policy. On average, they provide 50 to 60% of your monthly income. With short-term disability, you generally just get one lump sum payment. There's usually a week waiting period, and everyone should pay into this benefit. This isn't just about HD, this is just about planning for the future, especially because we don't have maternity leave in this country, and so if you want to have a family and you need to take time off, you're likely going to have to use a short-term disability benefit to do it. Long-term disability is what you need, like if you're stopping work because of your disability full-time. It helps replace up to 60% of your income if you become sick or injured. Like it's like the waiting period again should match what your short-term disability policy, and it's anywhere between 3 to 6 months. And the interesting thing is long-term disability can last different lengths of time. It can be a 2-year policy, a 5-year policy, a 10-year policy, or it can last until you reach full retirement age. And that is a choice. Like, the longer the policy is, the more it's going to cost. So when you're planning for this, if this is something you want, you could think, okay, maybe I'll just get a 2-year plan because that should cover the whole Social Security disability period. That'll at least get me income until I get that. And there are different options, so you can think about how you want to spend the money. And then generally you have to pay into the policy for at least a year before you can use the policy. For most policies like this, there is a waiting period, like to use the benefit, and then once you're actually approved for the benefit. And most long-term disability policies do require you to apply for Social Security disability insurance, because how this works after the fact, let's say your long-term disability policy is for $3,000 and then you're awarded $2,200 in Social Security disability. The max you're ever going to get is $3,000. The long-term provider will just cover the $800 difference between what you get in Social Security and what the full cost of the policy is. Health insurance is important because when you have a disabling condition, you need medical care to make sure you're getting the treatment you need to live your best quality of life. And health insurance can be really expensive, but this is one of those things. Get health insurance as you need it. If you do not need the most expensive policy at the age of 25, do not get the most expensive policy at the age of 25. This is something that has a lot more flexibility, and you can change it as your needs change. So you have to do a lot of research, and you have to make sure you're finding a plan that fits you. But this is definitely a lot more flexible. It's just something that you definitely need to have, especially if you start to become symptomatic and you do start to require that care or you need medication. So now we're getting into kinds of insurance that get more complicated when you have Huntington's disease or if you have a family history of Huntington's disease. It's even becoming more difficult to get life insurance if you have a family history of Huntington's disease. A lot of insurance companies will not provide it. Like, they ask that question on insurance applications now, do you have a family history of Huntington's disease? And even having a family history is enough to disqualify you or to make your plan really expensive. And this is beneficial because life insurance is beneficial because when you pass away, you get a lump sum payment that can help cover costs of things for your family. And other kinds of insurance are hospital insurance, critical illness insurance, and accident insurance. And I'm not going to go through these. These are just things that aren't necessarily relevant to HD, but are just good things to be aware of and to possibly have, because again, we never know what's going to happen in life. Look at the global pandemic. Nobody saw that coming. Oh, one really important thing to know, though, for private insurance benefits is if you answer yes to any of the following questions, the time has passed for you to be able to get private insurance. Are you symptomatic? Have you seen a neurologist? And have you had any documented cognitive issues? Answering yes to these questions mean it is too late to get private insurance. And there's no way around that, unfortunately. Okay, so that was private insurance. Employer insurance is the same as private insurance. It covers the same kinds of things. Just because of the way federal law works, you have employers are mandated to offer some of these things, and because they're mandated to offer them, they can waive some of the restricting criteria. Like, they don't ask as many questions. You can get a base life insurance policy through your employer, and they're not going to ask about your family history. The thing to note with these employer insurance benefits is you only have them while you are employed with that employer. You cannot take them with you when you change jobs. And I'm really talking about health insurance because what's really important here through the employer is COBRA insurance. While it's incredibly expensive, like if you have to stop working because of disability, it means you can continue your health insurance coverage while you figure out different options, while you get on Social Security disability insurance, while you look for the health insurance marketplace, because losing your job is a qualifying event. So you can use the marketplace exchange. Even if it's February or July, you can get on the marketplace and get insurance at that time. So COBRA, you'll get your employer health insurance, but it means there's no longer going to be help from your employer. You're going to have to cover the whole cost of the premium, which is likely going to be a lot more expensive. But again, that's still a good option to have if you want to make sure you have health insurance for like a month or two while you look for other options. It means you don't immediately have to get rid of your health insurance. You have some time. Again, short-term, long-term disability work the same way. Biggest difference here is they don't have the same criteria and limitations because it's offered through your employer. But generally speaking, you do need to read your long-term insurance policy because all of them are different. I can't speak for all of them. Like, there are a lot of different insurance carriers and providers, and all of their policies are a little bit different. You need to read through it before paying into anything because a lot of them have a clause that says, if you were diagnosed more than 24 months before you start paying into this policy, you're not going to be able to use the policy for that condition. So if you're diagnosed with HD at 23, start paying into a policy at 27 for a job that has that clause, you're never going to be able to use the long-term disability because of your HD. You could probably use it for something else, but you're not going to use it for your HD. So that's something to look into and consider. And I know that's not fun. These policies are often really long and complicated, but it is important to read over them if you have questions or concerns. Again, you can get additional coverage. The big thing to be aware of is that some of you were in my earlier session, so I know I'm repeating myself. But the big thing to be aware of with these employer benefits is not everyone pays into Social Security, or some people pay into Social Security and a separate retirement program. A lot of people don't know how to answer the question, what are you paying into, when I ask it? And it's really important because that's going to dictate where you apply to get disability benefits from, and it's going to dictate your eligibility. So if you pay into two different programs, then that's still pretty straightforward because you're just going to get benefits for both, and you should meet the criteria for both as long as you've been paying into them for a while. What becomes complicated is if you only pay into another program. If you work for a state government, or if you're a teacher, or if you work in law enforcement or a firefighter, those are common jobs where you pay into just a state program. I know for teachers, like in Ohio, you pay into the Ohio Public Education Retirement System. They don't pay into Social Security at all, which means they have to work in Ohio for at least 10 years before they can get disability from that program. It's important to know this because let's say you start working in Ohio, but then after 6 years you become a teacher in Georgia, and then you only teach in Georgia for 6 years and then you move on. You will not be eligible for disability in any of those states because you didn't work there long enough. So if you know that you have a career where you pay into a separate program and you may not stay in that state forever, you want to pay into something like a 403B retirement plan because that moves with you. And as long as you pay into it for 10 years, you'll be eligible for disability no matter where you are. This is just to highlight the intersection of benefits because Social Security disability insurance, the work-based credit program, has a lot of flexibility. They only look at your immediate work earnings. They don't care where you're getting money from anywhere else. You could win the lottery and become a millionaire and still be eligible for Ssdi because that money does not count as a resource. It also means that you can have short-term and long-term disability. You can have state disability all at the same time. So do not hesitate or wait to apply for something because you think the benefit's going to impact it. If you're eligible for Ssdi, go ahead and apply. The exception is for supplemental security income because it's financial need based. But if you've worked and if you just stopped working, go ahead and apply for disability and get all the benefits you're eligible for. When should you look for benefits for yourself? Really, this needs to start with your first job. We need to start changing the conversation, and this needs to happen as soon as possible. Like, these things need to be in place to guarantee that you have them when you need them. Because with HD, for most people going on disability, having to stop work, that's an inevitability. Like, average age of onset is between 30 and 50, which is prime working years. Like, knowing that you're going to have to stop working at some point and you're going to have to prepare for that is an important part of this process and important important part of this conversation. And it's also really relevant to actually have this conversation with your doctor, because while your doctor is taking medical record notes and looking at your symptoms and limitations, it's their medical records and what they write in your file that is going to get you approved for disability ultimately. So having the conversations with them, letting know what's going on, letting them know if you're having trouble at work, telling them what some of your issues are, so that's in your medical records, that's going to help you in the long run. And then some of the warning signs, like I get asked a lot, when should I stop working? There is no clear answer for that. That's different for everybody because everybody's job is different, everyone's situation is unique, and everyone's HD is unique to them. Nobody has the exact same set of symptoms, nobody progresses the same way, everything is different. So it's really just looking for signs to kind of indicate when it's time to move forward. So a big thing is when you start to have issues at work, like you start having issues performing your job tasks, you have trouble interacting with coworkers or supervisors, you have trouble getting to work, or you leave early, you have to take a lot of breaks, or you have difficulty concentrating. So that's a pretty clear-cut sign that you're starting to have issues. Things that are not as clear. For people who are unable to keep a job for more than 3 months, there's a lot of people I've worked with who can get the job. They do great in the interview, like they're able to get the job, but they can't keep the job because they aren't able to be trained and learn what they need to do, because as part of the executive function process, it gets a lot harder to learn new tasks as you progress in HD. And so if you've had multiple jobs in a 12-month period, you can get a job, but you can't keep it, it's probably time to start the disability process. If you haven't worked in over 12 months because of your condition, you need to apply for disability. And one of the reasons for this too is work credits expire, but also Social Security takes the average of your work earnings over the last 35 years. So for me, that'd be all of my work history right now, and they average it out. If you have zeros in your average, that significantly hurts your average. It can reduce your disability benefit by hundreds of dollars a month. So you don't want to do that. And then I forgot to update this slide, but making less than $6,040 a year, meaning you're not earning all of your credits. Let's say you keep working, but you're only earning $3,000 a year. You're only earning You're only earning 1/4 of credit, which means your credits are going to run out really fast. And like I said earlier, once your credits run out, the only way to get them back is to go back to work. Yes, you may be able to apply for disability as long as you're getting medical care, but if you have no medical diagnosis and you run out of credits, you're never going to be able to be approved for Social Security disability. And unfortunately, I see this a lot in the HD community, and I want to have this conversation so that doesn't happen anymore. I'm sorry, there's a lot of information in my presentation. There's a lot that goes into disability planning, and I feel like I have to cover it all at once because we don't talk about this enough in the community, and I'm trying to change that. But so there's a lot today. There's a lot of resources on the website, and you're always welcome to talk to me. But another thing that's really important is long-term care planning, because when we have somebody in your life that is going to have physical limitations, cognitive limitations, behavioral limitations, they're going to need modifications made to the home, like care schedules and all of those things, it's really important to talk about what that looks like, what the expectations are, and who's willing to do what as that process moves forward. Like additional care is a necessity. So thinking about like, do you want to stay at home? What needs to be done so you can stay at home? Or what needs to be done prior to placement in a facility? And the answer is as much as possible. One, so the facility can be as affordable as possible. So either you're on Medicaid, you've moved all your assets around so you're Medicaid eligible, there's legal documents in place so your loved one can communicate your wishes and your needs and make sure that they're heard. And this is not if this has to be done immediately, this is not something that can be done immediately. This is not a process that can be done overnight, which is why it's so important to have everything in place in advance. Like you can't just transfer assets out of someone's name, like with the drop of a hat, like that takes time. They also have to have cognitive awareness to sign over things, to transfer stuff if you don't have power of attorney. And it's important to talk about this in advance because you need to know the difference. Oh God. I'd like everybody to know I haven't coughed in like 2 days. This is just like too much for me now. You need to know the difference between like different long-term care facilities, what care they provide, and how they can manage your loved one. Don't be afraid to speak up and advocate for yourself. And respect the staff and care team and continue to be an active member of the care team. Even if your loved one is in a facility, like, you're still their loved one. You're still their voice. You still have to be there for them. And I know that's exhausting and difficult, like, but doing all these things help in the long run. And what should families know about starting the transition to long-term care? Manage your expectations. This process is going to be difficult. Be prepared to advocate for your loved one, which should be second nature to you at this point, because you should have been advocating, like, today is a good day to start advocating for yourself in all facets, like for HD, for medical care, for the HD Parity Act. Everything needs to be advocated for because this is a rare condition and there are a lot of complications to it. You're advocating every day. And it's good to know that many facilities are not familiar with HD, and don't assume the professional staff knows all or knows best for how to care for your loved one, so don't be afraid to speak up. Find out staffing ratios, contact your ombudsman if you have any issues, and know your patient rights, like your disability rights, and another really good organization for this is the ARC. This being said, there are some unexpected consequences of placing a family member into long-term care. A lot of times this means loss of income. If you have SSI, all but $30 will go to the facility. If you have Ssdi, you can continue to receive the benefit, but it has to be used towards the individual's care. When the individual is living at home, that meant it could go toward home expenses and like family expenses, but if they're no longer at home, that doesn't include home expenses anymore. If you are receiving reimbursement or income from caregiving, that income will stop because you're no longer caregiving. And then, like I said, Medicaid requires spend down of family resources if they're in the HD individual's name, which could mean loss of family home to pay back Medicaid. And again, this could be loss of ability to communicate needs if you don't have legal paperwork in place. And it also means a loss of control if you are the individual who's moved. And also if you're the caregiver, because you are no longer providing direct care, and that is an adjustment. Like, that's hard too. So what legal documents should be in place? You need to have an advance directive, because that guides medical professionals in your family to medical care you want to receive or refuse. And like, a facility will generally provide this assistance upon admission. It also includes creating a healthcare proxy or medical power of attorney. And this document's a lot easier to fill out than like a durable power of attorney. You can find all of these things on state websites. In some states, like, you can actually go through their bar association to find this stuff. And so if their bar association approves it, it's likely to be a good document and should abide by state law. Not every state does that though, so you have to check. And you either want to have power of attorney or guardianship or conservatorship. So again, like, everything we've talked about through this entire presentation really culminates in getting to this process, because it makes this process a lot easier. Because even if you're not there every day to provide their direct care, if you have these things in place, you're still providing that care, because they are supposed to and legally have to come to you to ask these questions and make sure they're going through these processes. And it's hard to let go sometimes and let somebody else provide that care. But if you've done everything to do this up to this point, you have done everything you can, and you can feel confident in that. Are there any questions?
Sure, I have one. Once you're approved for Ssdi, speaking, my husband has been approved for it. Do you ever recommend appealing the onset date to get Medicare quicker than 2 years? We did it. I did it all before.
It depends on when they establish the onset date. I've definitely had cases where I was like, no, Social Security, you're wrong. Like, we're appealing this. But then there's been other cases where there really was no medical evidence until that point, so there was nothing to really appeal because there was nothing to prove farther back. Yeah, it definitely depends on the circumstance, because sometimes Social Security, like, I've seen it where there's clear evidence for years farther back, and Social Security is like, no, we're only going to say you did it because you went to our doctor's appointment. I'm like, no, you're wrong. But then there are some cases where there's very little evidence, and like, they find like they probably had some kind of neuropsychiatric testing at the Social Security doctor's appointment. So I'm like, I'm not going to fight that. I'm not happy about it, but that probably is clear-cut evidence that I don't have otherwise. That's a good question. And are you? I don't know if there's like if you're paying yourself from your own money, I don't know if there's a like the reason to do this is to like to try to spend down like the person's assets who you're trying to get them out of their name, or if it's like, but is it a joint asset between you and your husband? No. Okay. So the exception is if he's applying for Medicaid because he needs a long-term care facility. States have different exceptions, but a lot of states, like if it's just the one spouse applying because they need this long-term care facility, the non-applying spouse can have like $125,000 in assets. So,
But I found that going through an elder law attorney, the spend down could be pretty beneficial to you.
yeah, and that's not something I know a lot about because again, that's like a different area of law and that's really complex. But going through an elder law attorney is great. Like it sounds weird to be like, why do I have to talk to an elder law attorney? It's because they're the ones who deal with this stuff. And we really do need to have like specialized disability attorneys, but that's really what an elder law attorney is. They deal with all of these issues. They're the ones who are like specialists in Medicaids in the state. Like they understand asset protection and like moving assets around. So if you have specific questions and if like your family has certain assets and you know that's going to be an issue in the future, talking to an elder law attorney is a really good place to start.
I worked in nursing homes for years in admissions, and one thing I can tell you, and Allison already said it, is whatever it is you're thinking about a planning is that 5-year look back. So, because when you go, they're going to go back 5 years.
Question about the assets. You might have answered it over here, ma'am, but both our names are on both of our assets. And would it need to just be me, the rest of my wife is B positive, and she's completely removed from just me on there? For simplicity of ease, it came up later, and there was conflict.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like because of the way our legal system works and how we quantify all these things, and you essentially have to be poor and have nothing to get these benefits, if you are the individual with HD, all of the assets need to be moved out of your name. And again, I would speak to an elder law attorney in your state because I know like that comes up with other that can be scary, especially like if both of your names are on the house and like there's always if you're me as a lawyer, there's always a what if. I'm like, oh God, something bad's gonna happen. And so you just wanna know like, if I do this, have I lost legal protections for other things? And so those are good questions to ask. And again, like I know I'm an attorney telling you to go talk to another attorney, but it's because they are specialized in this. And I wanna make sure all of your questions are asked, all of your needs are addressed, and you feel comfortable making this decision. Because I would not wanna force anyone into making a decision that is not right for them or their family. I just wanna provide resources and information.
It all depends on your state for us. Our state can't trust protection, and they're waiting till my husband got divorced, that trust protection went away. Had to go back and work something else out in the future.
You were talking about the long-term disability through like the employer, and you would use the phrase like diagnosed, that you wouldn't necessarily be, there might be stipulations in the wording. Do you know how to approach it, or like I'm not symptomatic, but I'm
And again, like that depends so much on the language in the document because these documents are so different. I was talking to someone else this morning, and apparently she had really weird language in her long-term disability policy that said she couldn't see her doctor for 6 months before she applied to use the benefit. I'm like, that's really weird and makes no sense. But like these policies can have really weird things written into them. And it's also because most of us don't read them. Like they're long and complicated and they don't make any sense. And you don't necessarily have to read everything. There are usually certain headers like exceptions for when your policy applies, or like this thing has to happen or this thing can't happen. And so it's good to look into those things because things just get snuck in there. And because there are so many different insurance providers, like I can't tell you what all of them say. And so you're gonna have to read your policy. It's probably one of those cases, like if you had to indicate, yes, I have a family history of HD and you've seen a neurologist, like it's a combination thing, because there's a lot of reasons you can see a neurologist. You can see a neurologist for migraines, so it depends on what other questions are asked and how you've had to answer them in the application.
Sorry, I have 1 second question. In those cases when just having a family history of Huntington's leads to a denial for long-term disability, are there workarounds or other kind of measures to be able to obtain that?
Unfortunately, there aren't really workarounds. The best thing you can do is apply for insurance through different companies to see what they say, because not every application's the same. Some ask if you have a family history of HD, some don't. But as the awareness of HD has increased, so has like insurance company awareness. So they start asking these questions. And unfortunately, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, GINA, doesn't offer protection in this area.
Assuming people probably aren't going to apply until they lose their job for disability. How long, and assuming they don't get denied, how long can they expect to wait until a decision is made?
The national average for a decision for an initial application is 6 months. That definitely has been that's taken longer because of the pandemic. It has really delayed things. Huntington's disease technically is a compassionate allowance condition through Social Security. And what that means is it should help expedite your case. You have to say that you need compassionate allowance. Social Security often gets this wrong. Social Security also just decides to ignore the fact that HD is a compassionate allowance condition and doesn't expedite it. And another fun thing is the only time, so there's 2 different places that review your Social Security disability application. It all starts at your local field office, and then it goes to Disability Determination Services. If your case is not correctly flagged at the field office, you cannot get your case flagged unless you are denied and you appeal it and you go back to the field office and review it again. And Social Security is looking for certain things to make sure they can correctly flag your case for compassionate allowance, but I've done research into this and it's not clear. I'm not sure what it is, because I know for things like breast cancer, you can get your case flagged for compassionate allowance for breast cancer, but it has to be stage 4 and it has to meet these certain criteria. I know Social Security has criteria for Huntington's disease. I'm still trying to figure out what they are so we can make sure every claim gets flagged for compassionate allowance. Are there any other questions? And again, this is my contact. That is not my contact information. There's nothing on the screen, so I apologize. Anyway. I'm sorry, I'm tired, I'm brain dead now. But it's just if you ever have questions, if you have friends or family members or anybody else who has questions or need this information, do not hesitate to contact me. If you're getting care from an HDSA Center of Excellence, do not hesitate to contact your social workers. Do not hesitate to contact your social workers and me. This is a really complicated process. If you go to hdsa.org/disability, there's a lot of wonderful resources on there. There actually are a few checklists for planning for all of these things based on your stage of HD. So if you're pre-symptomatic, there's a pre-symptomatic checklist. There's a checklist for early to mid-stage HD, and there's a checklist for late-stage HD. And it's not as detailed as this presentation, but it's a good high-level overview of just things to think about and things you want to put in place. And I said, if you have questions, do not hesitate to contact me, because this is scary and overwhelming, and we don't talk about this enough. So please, I'm always here to talk about it.